In this video, we'll be working with more of the AG Utilities live effect building blocks to create this beautiful geometric effect here in Adobe Illustrator. These are just regular vector paths, and the look is created in the Appearance panel with multiple fills that have a make shape effect applied, creating these triangles like we did in the last video to create the arrowheads. And we'll take things a step further by adding two other live effects, and we'll focus on how the order in which you arrange effects in the Appearance panel can dramatically change how the finished result looks. To begin, I'll delete this art, and we'll start from scratch with just these two paths here, and they have a default black and white stroke and fill. They're selected, and I'll go to the bottom of the Appearance panel to the FX menu, and under Additional Effects and AG Utilities, I'll choose Dashify. And this does something really special. At first, it looks like you just applied a dash like you would in Illustrator's stroke panel, but this is different. I'm just changing the dash length here to 30 pixels and the gap length to 3 pixels. But what's special about this effect is that each dash is turned into an individual path with their own start and end point. And this means we can apply more effects to this path as if it were divided into a series of little paths. And you can see how the dashes on the square are not aligned to the corners. So we have a checkbox here that will fix that. And now the corners are all evenly dashed. But we can see on the open path, the dashes at the end are a little shorter because of the length of the path. So we can use this magic checkbox here that shifts the numbers a bit to make the dashes an equal length, no matter how long your path is. And I'll click OK. Now I'll just remove this square and we're going to focus on the line for these next steps. Next, we'll be adding shapes to the path like we did in the last video using the Make Shape effect. We want filled shapes, so I'm going to the fill here and I'll change it to blue. And I'll make the stroke none so that it disappears. And now I'll select the blue fill and then I'll go down to the FX menu and AG Utilities, and I'll choose the Make Shape effect. And by default, it applies a circle. The location is set at relative to bounds, referring to the boundary of this line as an object, and the circle is centered, as we can see in the 9-block icon. The size is absolute, and it's 24 pixels in diameter. And you can change this, of course, to any size you want. But look, we're seeing a gap in the circle fill. It's actually getting dashed by the Dashify effect, and so we need to change the order of effects. I'll click OK to apply the Make Shape effect, and we'll go back to the Appearance panel. Effects are applied here in top to bottom order. We have a path with no stroke and a blue fill that's creating a circle, and once the circle is created, it then gets dashed. We want to Dashify this path first before we make the circle. So I'll click on Dashify. It's highlighted in blue and I'll drag it up to the very top of the order. And as you do this, be careful not to place it on the stroke. You see that thick highlight? Instead, you want to see that blue line at the very top before you release it. And now Dashify is a pre-effect. It's applied to the whole object before the stroke and the fill and before the circle is created. So the circle is no longer dashed. Now let's go back to the Make Shape effect on this blue fill and change the settings. First, I'll change the circle to a triangle. Next, it's located relative to the bounds of the path, so it only appears once. But I want this triangle to appear on every single dash on this path, so I'll change this option to a long path once. And remember, Dashify has made this path into a series of individual paths, so we have one triangle per dash. And the size is absolute, but I'll change this to relative because I want it to follow the size of the dash. That way I can update it if I ever change the dash size. And it looks like we lose our triangles, and it's easy to get tripped up on this, but I'll explain. Here we have the width. It's 100% of the original width of the dash, and in our case, that's 30 pixels. And the height, by default, is 100% of the height of the dash. And we know dashes don't really have a height. It's like 0. So we need to change this height in the menu to width. And now both dimensions are 100% of the width of the dash. So we have a 30 by 30 pixel triangle. And one last step here, I'll rotate these triangles to 90 degrees. And now I'll click OK. Next, we're going to duplicate the blue fill by selecting it and dragging it down to the plus button at the bottom of the appearance panel. And this places an exact copy above the original with all the same settings. So I'll go to the top fill, change this color to a yellow swatch I have saved, and I want this to be transparent. So I'll change the opacity setting for this yellow fill to multiply, and we can see the yellow and blue are making green. And now I want to flip those triangles. So I'm going to go into the Make Shape effect and then change the rotation to a -90 degrees. And now we see that overlap is creating a nice geometric look. So to review, we have our path, it's being dashed. We can see that when I hide the effect, just one shape on the path. Let me turn that back on. And then each dash has a yellow triangle fill on it, and it's transparent, and it's sitting above the blue triangle fill. Now we're going to duplicate the top fill once again by dragging it down to the plus button at the bottom of the panel. And I'll change this one to a magenta swatch I have saved. And then we'll go into the Make Shape settings, and we're going to change this shape to a square. And I'm going to change that rotation to 45 degrees so that it looks like a diamond. And instead of the relative size, I want to change this to absolute. And then I can precisely dial in an exact size for these. So I'll do this at 16 pixels. And now I want to shift the location of the diamonds so that they fall between the triangles in the white space. Currently they're just centered on each dash, just like the triangles are, and we can change the location percentage here. 0 shifts them to the beginning of the dash, 100 shifts them to the end of the dash, and 50% shifts them to the middle of the dash. Now over in the 9 block, if we hover here, there's a tooltip that's helpful. It tells us this position is happening before the rotation is applied. So I can't always predict this depending on the settings. I just like to click around here until it starts looking like I want. And so I'm going to use the lower right point, and then I can go back to the percentage, and I'll shift that a bit to make it look more centered. And that looks good. So I'll click OK. Now we're almost finished, but I want these sharp corners to be softened a bit. So we're going to apply the AG corners effect to this whole path. And to do this, make sure you don't have any individual strokes or fills selected in the appearance panel because we're going to apply this to the whole object. So I just like to click in the empty area at the bottom of the panel to deselect everything. And then go to FX and go past AG Utilities. This effect is all the way at the bottom under Vector Scribe. And here it is, AG Corners. And this effect will just round every corner it finds. It's very handy. And I'll add a little bit of rounding here, just 2 pixels. And these other defaults are fine. We'll look at these settings in more detail in another video. And I'll click OK. And it appears that it's not working. But once again, we have to look at the order. Effects are applied from the top of the panel to the bottom. The fills are stacked from bottom to top, like any other stacking order in Illustrator, but the effects at the top of the order are applied first. And by default, AG Corners is applied near the top of the appearance panel. And so this means that it gets applied before all those fills that are creating the triangle shapes and the squares. So I need to drag this to the bottom. So going all the way below that blue fill, making sure that you see that blue line highlight, and then release. And now those corners are looking great. And we're finished. I'm going to save this as a graphic style. With that path selected, go into the Graphic Styles panel and click the plus button. And that way I can draw a circle and apply it to that. And let's try a star. That looks amazing. So that's creating a multi-fill geometric effect using the Dashify effect, the Make Shape effect, and AG Corners, all part of the Building Block Live effects by Astute Graphics that let you create specialized appearances in Adobe Illustrator.